Hey guys, just want to come on here real quick and talk about Nebraska coaching carousel, Matt Rhule more specifically, with him being fired today by the Carolina Panthers. There's been a lot of talk about him, a lot of smoke, as there should be, and as predicted, we knew this was going to happen. He was eventually going to get fired. He hasn't been a good coach at all for the Panthers, and a lot of conversation about whether Nebraska will hire him or not, or if that's a good hire. Here's my take about it. I don't think Matt Rhule will be a great hire. I have a couple reasons why. Number one, I don't want coaches who flame out of the NFL, guys who aren't winners. And I understand that not every single option we're going to have is going to be a bona fide winner through and through, but he's a guy that hasn't won at all in the last 3 years, and that to me that's not appealing to me. And I don't really like coaches who are straight up failures in the NFL. Let's put it blunt. He hasn't done well. So that's number one. Number two, I think his rebuilds of Temple and Baylor are really overrated. A lot of people look to those and say, my goodness, he's a bona fide winner in college, and he has only won. That's not true. And people love to say, well, he started at Temple and they only won a couple games, and then he built them into a double-digit win, program. But people forget that when he inherited the program, they've already had a couple good years before he was there. He didn't do all the heavy lifting in that rebuild. But if we're being honest, the Temple rebuild was a lot more impressive than Baylor. And he obviously left Temple to go to Baylor. And a lot of people credit him with turning around Baylor. He didn't turn around anything at Baylor. He didn't do any of the heavy lifting. He didn't do any of the infrastructure. The infrastructure was already built by Art Briles. And say what you want about Art Briles off the field, he was a heck of a football coach. And Matt Rhule just took what Art Briles built and sustained it. That isn't incredibly impressive, in my opinion. So people love to overrate that and overrate his years in college as a head coach. And I think that shouldn't be credited to the amount it is currently. I also don't love coaches who willingly leave college football. And people love to, when you say something like that, people love to say, oh, but Nick Saban left college football, but Jim Harbaugh left college football. There's a difference. Nick Saban didn't leave when he was at his peak, right? Matt Rhule left at his peak, at the top of his career. He just led Baylor to have a great season. He had no reason to leave, and he did, because he obviously didn't like something with the college game. And that's a problem. And I've heard things about Matt Rhule not being in love with recruiting. That's a problem. Especially in Nebraska, where, you can't just roll into Nebraska and recruit, and be able to recruit elite like you can if you roll into Miami or you roll into Florida or you roll into USC. Like, anybody who goes to USC is going to recruit at a top 10 level in the country. It doesn't matter who you are, because you're USC. You can't have a coach like that come to Nebraska and do that same thing, because we're not gifted with a pipeline state. Or with, great traction with the recruits. We're not a household name like we used to be. So we need a coach who's willing to recruit at a high level and willing to put in the work, and I don't think Matt Rhule is that. And that's my third reason. And lastly, I think Matt Rhule single-handedly was one of the worst. I think Matt Rhule in the 2022 NFL, he was the worst game manager head coach, and it wasn't close. And that's something he's been throughout his career. Even when he was at Baylor, even when he was at Temple, he wasn't a great game manager head coach. He lost games due to his incapabilities during the game. And that's something that we've seen throughout his career. There was a crazy stat I saw on Twitter posted the other day that Matt Rhule, in his tenure with the Carolina Panthers, he was 1-26 in games where the opponents scored more than 17 points. That's such a ridiculous stat. It sounds fake. Just not a great game manager, head coach. And that stat is an indictment on talent. But when it gets to that level, it's more of an indictment on talent and more indictment on how bad of a head coach he is in game, his in-game preparations. And personally, seeing what Scott Frost took, and Scott Frost was one of the worst in-game and preparation coaches we've ever had here in Nebraska, if not the worst. Reason why he could never win a big game, even though we had more talent. Reason why we always lost to teams below us. because he was so bad in game, because he couldn't prepare. And so many times Scott Frost would say, oh, we had to throw out all our game plan because they came out differently than we thought. And I don't want to get wrapped around talking about Scott Frost, but he was an awful in-game head coach. Matt Rhule is just as bad. He is really bad. So I can't get my head around Matt Rhule. I don't think he'd be the worst hire in the world. There are some hires out there that I think would be probably just killer hires. Like, it would destroy the program. And you could say this program's already destroyed. Like, we're still somewhat relevant. It would kill the program to levels that we've never seen before if we were to hire some of these guys. And I think one of those guys is Bill O'Brien. I won't go too far into Bill O'Brien. I think he would be one of the worst hires possible. But I'm just going to quickly say that when Alabama fans are actively trying to get rid of him because he's that bad of an offensive coordinator, that's an indictment on how great of a head coach candidate he is. And I don't want to get into him too heavily. I'll talk about him more later once the season's over and we start talking more in depth about these head coaches. I don't think he's a real candidate, though. And I know Trev's interested in him extensively, but I hope that Trev makes the smart move and doesn't hire. But I think that's an example of a coach that I think would be a train wreck. So there's my little analysis of Matt Rhule. Really quick, I wanted to talk about Mickey and my mindset about Mickey Joseph. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of. I know I just talked about Matt Rhule, but I'm not a huge fan of talking about coaching hires right now because we know nothing. Right, the season's still going on. So many variables are at play. Mickey Joseph could be the guy, but here's what I know: Mickey Joseph is not confirmed to be the guy, nor is he confirmed to not be the guy. So a lot of people are either, oh my goodness, hire Mickey Joseph right now because he won 2 games, or they're completely off the Mickey Joseph train just because he was on the Scott Frost coaching staff for a year. Don't be on either train. Because Mickey Joseph, for the people who are on the Mickey Joseph train, he could easily lose 6 straight. Easily could lose 6 straight. We have a tough schedule going forward. And you could be off of it. So you jumped on the train, you jumped into the car, and your seatbelt's already buckled. You can't unbuckle that anymore. You're going too quick. You got to wait. Check out your options. And at the end of the year, then we could talk about it. But people jump to conclusions about Mickey this early. Don't talk about it. Because at the end of the day, the season's going on. I'm not focused about next year with Mickey. I'm focused about this year because this year we could still make a bowl game. We could still make things interesting. Hey, we're still first in the West. So everybody talking about Mickey Joseph, whether they think he's going to be the guy, whether they're completely on board with him being the next head coach, I think they're jumping too prematurely. And I know they're rooting for him. I've noticed that, and I saw something about this earlier, but the people who refuse to fire Scott Frost, people who are always going to be on the Scott Frost bandwagon, who are never wanting to fire him, those are the same people that are going to be on the Mickey bandwagon no matter what. Like, you just have to realize that. Personally, I don't care if Mickey's the guy or not. I think if he wins a bowl game, absolutely he should be that next head coach. If he doesn't even make a bowl game, no. That's my take. You can't hire a guy who wins 5 games. I know that'd be the best season we've had here since 2019, but you can't hire him if he only wins 5. So that's my take about Mickey. I don't really want to get into that extensively, but I just wanted to mention that and how I thought it was kind of dumb how fans were really jumping to conclusions or just jumping the gun on their conclusions about Mickey Joseph being the head coach next year or not being the head coach next year. Wait and see, and let's not even focus about it. All right, let's not talk. I don't even want to talk about the coaching carousel extensively, right? Let's focus on Purdue, right? Purdue is next week. Let's beat Purdue. Let's go into the bye week. You got 5 more games after that, and let's done with this season. So thank you for watching this video. Also, I guess I should mention who my number 1 guys are in the coaching carousel. Since we just talked about Matt Rhule, Dave Arend is number 1. He's number 1 on most people's board. Number 2, Lance Leipold. I've been high on Lance Leipold since his Buffalo days, and I was high on him this offseason even. I talked about him. A lot of people didn't like Lance Leipold this offseason. They said, oh, well, he only won 2 games at Kansas. He's making those people look pretty dumb right now. 5-1 at Kansas. He is a heck of a head coach. And I don't want to get into him really extensively, but his age isn't a factor. He's going to turn this place around if he gets hired. And number 3, just off the top of my head, I guess I have to think about it. I do like Matt Campbell a lot. I think he's the best development coach, one of the best developmental coaches in the entire country, just straight up. And it really speaks testaments when Dave Aranda and Lance Leipold have mentioned multiple times in press conferences that they're trying to build their program like Matt Campbell did at Iowa State. So those are my 3. I know Matt Campbell isn't a great, people are, you're either completely in love with Matt Campbell or you're completely off the Matt Campbell bandwagon. I'm on it. I think he'd be a good hire, and he's exactly what Nebraska needs, just a solid head coach. His game plan's built around the Big Ten, and he knows how to develop. So those are my top 3. That was my analysis of Matt Rhule and quick analysis over the Mickey head coaching rumors or whatnot, or what people were saying. So thank you all for watching the video. Expect Purdue breakdown this week, going to the bye week after, and we'll just have a quick video recapping the season so far and all of that. So thank you for watching. Have a good night, and thank you.